Hello everybody. Today we are going to talk about the strategies how to prepare your students for OGE and EGE speaking tasks. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Alexandra and I have more than 10 years of teaching experience, but what is more important, I'm an approved OGE and EGE expert, so I've attended quite a lot of seminars and workshops dedicated to this topic. But I have been preparing students for this exam since 2013, so I hope that we will find some information that is really useful for you. So, well, the agenda is quite long today, and making a long story short, we are going to observe speaking tasks and different types of speaking tasks today. So we're going to discuss some very general strategies and then specify it on different types of OGE and EGE tasks. Strategies are for students. What should we teach our students to do in the exam, during the exam? So as far as we know, OGE speaking tasks have got like 3 exercises. Reading, answering the questions of the electronic assistant, and a monologue. If we talk about EGE, we have got reading. Also, they are going to ask questions about the advertisement. It's the second task. The third task is describing a picture as a photo in the album. And the fourth task is comparing two pictures. So these two are quite complicated for students usually. Let's start with very general strategies for these exams. So first of all, we should use the samples from fup.ru. It is not an advertising, but the advantages of this approach is the following. If we talk about OGE, my students, and it is not only about speaking part, but about all the tasks, usually say that in the exam they have met not all, but quite a lot of the same tasks that we have done in the class. So we can say that they use these samples for OGE exam, like for all tasks, for reading, writing, speaking, and so on. If we talk about EGE, of course, they do not do this, but the tasks there are demonstrated from the previous years. So these are the samples that you can use, and be sure that almost the same type of the task your students will see in the exam. So that is why it is important to use these authentic tasks. There is a bank of tasks there, so they are free to use and you're welcome to use them. Another point is that we have to make the preparation process as close to the real exam situation as possible. So we have to set the timer for students. We have to limit the time for them, because like any exam is limited in time, and we should teach this time management as well. We should record the speech. It's a good idea too, because sometimes for students it is a kind of a stressful situation when their speech is recorded. If we talk about online courses, of course, it is kind of easier for them, but at the same time, we should teach them. Well, as a homework, record your speech and send it to me. And then it's a good idea to listen to it together and analyze it together. So it's a kind of a work too. Another point is that we have to give very productive feedback. It means that when the student completes the task, it's a good idea, as I've said before, to analyze it together and to ask the questions that can be asked by the student to himself or herself. So, but we will talk about the feedback a little bit later. Well, So moving to the strategies, we're going to start with the strategies for OGE and EGE reading task. They are very similar to each other. The only difference is that the vocabulary is more complicated for OGE, of course, but we can use the same strategies for both reading tasks. You can see their sample of the task below. And the time is a little bit different. So for EGE, they have 1.5 minutes to read aloud. And for OGE, they have 2 minutes to read aloud, but the preparation time is just the same, 1.5 minutes. First of all, it's a good idea to pre-teach some reading rules, just to pre-teach how to read big numbers. In almost every task, they have this. How to read some consonant clusters like the, and so on. How to use the intonation in questions and in affirmative sentences to show this difference, to work with the intonation. To work with some prominent and non-prominent words, to give some examples of them. To show how to divide the sentences in the logical chunks that we have to make a pause. For example, we can make a pause before WH words, and it's a good idea to breathe here because sometimes they try to read the long sentence just without breathing. It's quite dangerous for health, by the way. So that we need to raise the intonation when we have listing and so on. So just to read, work with these logical chunks and intonation, so with all these clusters. And also, we have to explain that the score will be lower if the student makes some mistakes that reduce communication. And by these mistakes, we mean, for example, if we have the word bear, I don't know why, but almost every student reads this word as beer. And this really reduces communication because it's just a different word. Or another common mistake is since. We have since and they read it signs, and vice versa. These are also different words, and this mistake can reduce communication. Or for example, they read this cluster th as s, and they have, in this case, think instead of think. So again, two different words. So we have to draw students' attention to these mistakes. Another strategy is to set the timer. So, and give the student, we set the timer, give the student 1.5 minutes to read the text silently, like to whisper. It's a good idea to whisper because if they just look at the text, when they open their mouth and start reading aloud, the result can be different. So it's a good idea to whisper. It is not recorded, it is not evaluated, but it is more productive for students when they start reading aloud. Then we give the students this exact time to read aloud, 2 minutes for EGE, for OGE, sorry, and 1.5 minutes for EGE. So we check that the student is in this time limit. It's crucially important not to interrupt the student while reading. We just write down the mistakes and work with them after the student finishes. And when the student finishes, we give a very productive feedback. We can show the word to the student and ask to read it again. For example, how can we read this word? And the student should read it. If we feel that there are too many mistakes, and we should remember that, well, they are teenagers and they can be really demotivated if they see that, oh my God, especially in the beginning, we have like thousands of mistakes, we will never pass these exams. So if we feel that there are too many mistakes, we can use shadow reading. When we talk about shadow reading, we can give the following instruction, like read after the teacher, sentence by sentence, try to copy the intonation and pronunciation. So what we do is we read the sentence and the student reads after us. We read another sentence and the student reads after us again. So you just set the example, the student reads after you. And you work this way, sentence by sentence, and you draw students' attention to the words, phrases, like to the mistakes that the student has done, but without this, you've done the mistake here. Just you can put the accent with your voice, like bear, and there are a lot of polar bears. So usually students understand and remember that, okay, I've made the mistake here. This is the correct variant, the correct option. So here, after this work, we set the timer again and give the student 1.5 minutes to get ready to read it silently. And then again, we give the student time to read the text aloud. And after that, we praise the student, we can demonstrate the progress and just say, good for you, now you have really less mistakes. That's great. And also, these strategies are important to implement from the very first lesson. First, you pre-teach, then you work like this, with setting the timer, giving the feedback, and so on and so forth. Well, moving to the OGE task of the electronic assistant, we can use the following strategies here. First of all, we have to teach the students to give full answers only. By the full answer, we mean if the question is, how old are you? The answer is, I am, for example, 16 years old. This is a full answer. We have got a subject, a predicate, and that's important. And it is connected to the question, of course. If we just answer 16, it is not a full answer, and the point, and it is 0 point. So just the full sentence. Then we should remember that the student does not need to speak for 40 seconds that is given for the answer. They can divide this time into 20 seconds to think and 20 seconds to speak. It is really like impossible to answer some questions without any preparation. So that's okay if the student thinks for 20 seconds and then speaks for 20 seconds or less. So it is really not necessary to speak for all the given time. Just think and answer. The main point is that the answer is connected to the question and it is a full sentence. It's a good idea to teach the students to remake questions into affirmative sentences. Like we demonstrate the indirect word order, then direct word order, so, and explain that you have to move this here to make it an affirmative sentence. So just, we really can train our students before. And then it's important point that we answer anyway. Even if the student is not quite sure, they do not keep silent. They speak. That is why it's important to remake the question into the affirmative sentence and then just say anything if you do not know the answer. Like, there are only 2 points here, 0 or 1 point for correct answer, and 0 for the wrong answer. So if you answer and if you guess, that's great, you have got 1 point. If you answer and it's wrong, you have got 0, there are no minuses. So that's why it's important to answer in any case. And also, like we do not teach students to lie, but we explain that nobody can check whether they go out every evening or not, whether they have this or that sightseeing in their town. So just say something connected to the question, that it makes sense, and well, just make an answer. Well, almost now we can move to the strategies for the monologue in OGE. So here is their sample. Starting from this year, they have 4 points to cover. Previously it was 3 points. Now it is even easier for students because they have like this sample, this plan, and they can just follow it because the amount of speech is still the same. It's from 10 to 12 sentences. And by the sentence here, we mean that we have got this subject and predicate. So if the student is able to create this long, complicated sentences, that's great. It doesn't mean that it will be counted like one sentence. If there are some parts in the sentence, they will be counted like separate sentences. Okay? So first of all, if you know that your student has difficulties with speaking, that they say something like, I don't know, I have no ideas, even in Russian. It's a very common phrase. I think almost every teacher has heard it. So it's a great idea to announce the topic in advance. For example, in the end of the lesson, we can say, well, next time we are going to talk about environment. It's one of the most complicated topics for students. And this way, the student can think of this topic, get some ideas, but like to guarantee that the student will not stay like, okay, environment, so I don't know about this topic and I'm not going to check the information. We can also provide some useful material. We can use some texts that are graded to the student's level, and like we send this text to the student. If your student can speak but just doesn't have some ideas, the student can read the text and use some ideas for the speech. If you know that your students have some real difficulties with talking, we can do the following. We can send this text, and after that, ask the student to learn this text by heart, but we do not ask the student to answer the text like a poem without any comprehension. We can make a similar topic, similar plan, but based on this text. So, and they just use some phrases, some information from this text. But it's for very low levels. If your student is able to talk, it's enough to send the topic, to provide some ideas for the student. Then it's a good idea to draw students' attention that monologue must have an introduction and conclusion, and they should be connected to the topic. It might be just one sentence, but it should be connected. And yeah, we have to follow the given plan. It's not a good idea to change the order of the points. Just use what you have in the task. And then we set the timer and give the student 1.5 minutes to get ready for the answer. Then we give the student 2 minutes for speaking. We do not interrupt the student. We write down the mistakes. And here, when we see that, for example, we have provided some material, but the student still doesn't have any ideas about the topic, we can create a template. We can use some introductory phrases, linkers, and conclusion. phrases. We can discuss and brainstorm together. We can personalize the topic and generalize, and we can do it just after the student has performed. By introductory phrases, I mean, if this level is fine, we can use something like everybody can agree that environment is an extremely important part of our life. So, and we have this connection with the topic. If this student's level is low, we can just say, I would like to tell you about environment. It's an introductory phrase and it is connected to the topic. By the linkers, in the 9th grade, we just mean not very complicated phrases such as because, that is why, in my opinion, so really simple. And by conclusion, we mean, again, for the higher level, we can say, in conclusion, I would like to say that environment, we should take care about environment, for example. But if your student's level is lower, we can say, that is all that I wanted to say about environment. It's important to demonstrate that the student can perform this spontaneous speech, that it is not a ready-made template. So that's what they are going to, what they want to hear in the exam. Also, I've noticed that students sometimes they are lost with this task, but if we remake these affirmative statements into questions, it is easier for them to answer. So we can ask these questions. We can ask the questions like, okay, here we have something like environmental problems. Well, what environmental problems do you know? Maybe not in your town, but globally. Have you ever heard about rainforests? Are there any problems with the rainforest? So we really generate this meaningful talk about personalization and generalization. Sometimes for students, it is really complicated to understand that, like, okay, I'm a modern teenager. And for example, there is a question, what books do modern teenagers read? And they say, I don't know. Well, are you a teenager? Yep. What books do you read? Fantastic books. Great. So say, modern teenagers read fantastic books. It's like a personalization. And vice versa, they say, well, for example, I don't know what environmental problems we have in our city. Okay, what environmental problems are there in the world? Why not? Nobody checks again. And another point is that after this discussion, we set the timer again and give the student the time to get ready. Then we listen to the student for 2 minutes. And then we praise the student to demonstrate that the student has made the progress. So these are the steps that we follow in almost each speaking lesson. So we need to first create these time limits closer to exams, and at the same time, with these questions, with these templates, discussion, brainstorming, and personalization, generalization, we teach the student how to perform in the exam when there are no teacher. Just, okay, what can you do? And these tips we can use in this preparation time. So let's move further, and we are going to skip reading part of EGE because, as I've mentioned, we can implement the same strategies for EGE reading. We are going to have a look at EGE asking questions tasks. So they usually have a kind of advertisement, and they have this picture to attract the attention. And there is a list of questions, 5 questions to ask about the following points. So they have 1.5 minutes to create these questions silently and 20 seconds for each question. And again, it's not necessary to speak for 20 seconds. like for the whole 20 seconds. Just ask the question, wait for the next 20 seconds. So first of all, we have to pre-teach how to make direct questions. Just to say that you can't use this. Can you tell me, please? It's not necessary to be polite here, just to demonstrate the ability of asking questions connected to the topic. Talking about the topic, we should remember to mention what the student is asking about. So if it is about the new bookstore, we need to mention it. Like, where is the new bookstore situated? So to demonstrate that these questions are connected to the given topic. Then we, again, set the timer, let the student prepare for asking. We give this time for each question, but it's the maximum. So if the student has asked the questions quicker, faster, just that's okay. Not more than 20 seconds is important. Don't interrupt, give the feedback after the student finishes. So that's like the same thing. The main idea here is to teach them how to make direct questions and how to connect these questions to the topic. In my opinion, this task is even simpler than in OGE, where they have to comprehend the question and to answer it. Well, one of the most complicated tasks for students is the following: describing a picture task, as in their album. So here it's important to remember that when we look at the pictures, we should choose the picture that is easier to describe. Like okay, in the first picture, we can see the background and we can describe it. In the foreground, there is a lady, so there is some action, she is eating, so it is easier to describe than the third picture, for example, where there are just two people standing in the railway station. And also, it's important to draw students' attention to the tenses used in the task so they can help them in the answers. There is the past tense in the first point, present simple, or just the present in the second, the present continuous in the third. So we draw their attention to this point because it can help them in choosing the correct grammar tense. Also, we again create the template with some introduction phrases, linkers, conclusions. So as an introductory phrase, we can use everybody would agree that, for example, healthy food plays an important role in our life. So everybody would agree that is a template. Another part is changeable. As linkers, or in conclusion, I would like to say that, again, healthy lifestyle is a good way to live. And here we have this template. In conclusion, I would like to say that, and then it is again, the second part should be connected to the given topic, to the given picture. Another idea is that here we use kind of informal style. I've decided to show the picture to you. It's like the last phrase, the last part of the speech. Why you decided to show the picture to your friend, and we use I've decided to show the picture to you, because it's like choose one to describe to your friend. You have to follow the situation. And as far as it is a talk between friends, we can use informal style. Draw the student's attention to the amount of phrases. It's from 12 to 15. And the same rule about phrases works as about phrases in OGE monologue. We set the timer for the given time. Then we listen to the student for 1.5 minutes, sorry, for 2 minutes, We don't interrupt, we write down the mistakes, it's all the same. Then we discuss the mistakes with the student. We can ask questions about mistakes, like what is the correct option here. We can ask some additional questions about the content if needed, if we understand that the student hasn't mentioned something, for example, the background. We can say, well, what can you see in the background? Where is the person, inside or outside, just to give some ideas for the student. And again, we set the timer after this correction and give the student some time to get ready and give the student time to speak, and then we praise the student. It's an important part of the task. Well, talking about comparing the pictures, it's also complicated, so we should draw students' attention that here we first of all read the fourth point in the task. Like say which of the celebrations presented in the pictures you preferred as a child. And that is the topic, celebration. And that is what we have to make the introduction and conclusion about. So introduction, phrases, linkers, conclusion, it's just the same, like everybody can agree that celebrations are very important for children. And it's important to mention action and location for both pictures. So they say in the first picture, we can see a family inside some beautifully decorated room, while in the second picture, we can see friends outside. They are celebrating something too. So they're giving presents for the boy. So it's important to mention about both pictures because usually children forget. We can use appropriate linkers such as when we want to demonstrate differences at the same time, on the opposites, in contrast, while for comparing, like in both pictures, or the pictures that have in common the following things, so we use. And our speech should be connected to the main topic. That's important. So it's like, again, we set the timer, and this is just the same. We set the timer, we give the students some time, 1.5 minutes to think. So the work with this task and preparation period is just the same. Well, to conclude, I can say that we should practice as much as possible. So we just practice using the proper samples. You let your student know what experts want to hear, so you explain what to do. If your students are interested, you can download the criteria from the VP.ru and read them together with the student. And you teach your students how to use the strategies just from the beginning. And then you give more and more free practice for them. Like, you do not interrupt, let them prepare themselves, because in exams there are no teachers. And I mean, like for speaking, it is not necessary to make a kind of a lead-in, warm-up. We can make a warm-up connected to the topic, but no, like, now we're going to talk about this. So do you have any ideas? Well, it is more productive to really to make this situation, this preparation, as close to the real exam as possible. To let them understand that, well, you can use this strategies, you should think this way, you should generalize, personalize, and so on. You should describe the pictures, you should pay attention to the fourth point. So these are more important points than just, well, the lesson of preparation for exam is really different from the general lesson. So because we give students more freedom and we give more feedback, and so, by the way, if you use this strategy like talk, prepare, talk, discuss with the teacher, discuss the mistakes, and again prepare and talk, Sometimes students are too lazy and they're like, I don't want to talk about this topic again. Well, I better try very hard from the first attempt. So it's a kind of a psychological trick. Well, so thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to text me via Skype or via Slack. After our video, you have to complete a very short test. It's very simple. And then you choose the date of the workshop and you will receive, you press submit, you will receive the link to the Skype chat to your email that you've mentioned in the beginning. So please check that the email is without any mistake. So you receive this link, you click on this link, you move to the Skype chat. There's no meeting when you move, but there I will give following instructions what to do just to check their attendance. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope that this information has been productive for you, and I hope to see you at our practical part. So bye-bye.